I'm back with another list of stuff that you should be watching while Corona has us all on house arrest. If you're in the States, you're definitely going to have a much bigger selection to watch than we do here, unless we're using a VPN. Of course, I don't have that, so I just watch what's available to me on Amazon Prime. And that being said, these are the 5 things that are available to anyone here in Qatar or the GCC on Amazon Prime that I think are pretty great for watching during quarantine or social distancing. Number 1 is The Boys. I gotta be honest, man, I was super burnt out on superhero stuff, although I love Garth Ennis, the guy who wrote the comic that this is based off of, so I was willing to give it a chance. I didn't think it would be formulaic like the Marvel movies or as dark and kind of glum as the DC stuff. I'm glad that I was right. So basically the premise is, the real world, superheroes exist. How would we deal with it? And if these superheroes exist, what if they have personality disorders or extreme temper or they're alcoholics or anything that can really happen to a normal person, any type of mental instability? On top of that, they have their superpowers and they're kind of invincible. So what can you do about it? Basically nothing, so you have to let them run free. Enter the Butcher and his team of freelancers who are out for revenge against these superheroes because they know that they are not what they seem. And that's basically the premise of this show. You have 4 different storylines that kind of all weave together. It's really, really well done. It's very dark, it's very funny, it's very violent and gory. It's the best superhero thing I've seen since the Watchmen show, and those are about the only 2 things I've seen in the last few years that have really surprised me or had me enjoying superheroes. Number 2, Hunters. Hunters is a super divisive show that's really hard to describe. So you have a team of concentration camp survivors and freelancers who are out to stop Nazis from taking over America. One thing I really liked about the show is the fact that they actually go into the details of what happened after the Nazis surrendered. We basically took all of their brilliant scientists and researchers, no matter how big of a war criminal they were, and we brought them to America and put them to work for us, giving them new identities and clearing their name basically. Just rubbing out the fact that they killed millions and millions of people. Now, a lot of people said that this premise is stupid and unrealistic, but it's actually fact. We did this. Now, some of the stuff that the show goes into, people can definitely say, oh, that wouldn't happen or anything like that. But you got to remember, too, this is basically like a comic book show or a stylized 70s grindhouse type serial. It's got this really cool balance of far-fetched animation, kind of like you'd see in a Guy Ritchie or Tarantino movie, but then you have these really, really serious moments, really sobering, really dark, really kind of depressing, but that's how it should be because that's what these situations would dictate. At the same time, you get this cathartic release of anger from the revenge that these guys get on these Nazis. Now, I'm not going any further into the plot or the ending or anything like that because there's a lot to the show. But if you love good pulpy stuff, if you love grindhouse or violence or Tarantino or Refn or Zoller, those type of filmmakers, you're going to love this. Number 3, The Expanse. I didn't know what I was getting into when I started The Expanse, but right away I saw that it was something that was very impressive and very unique. Now, I didn't realize they were a series of books and that they were well loved by millions of people all over the world, but now I see why. Now, I know that's high praise and it sounds like hyperbole, but it is definitely not. You have this amazing crew of people on the ship called the Astronaut. You have 3 different factions that all play into the story. You have the Belters, which are people who live on the outskirts of our solar system and they gather resources. Then you have the people who've colonized Mars and Earth, and all of them have these unique needs and wants, and they all kind of intertwine into a really complicated, super layered story. And on top of that, you also have some alien stuff that kind of kicks in. Now, again, I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm telling you right now, this is the best sci-fi show since Battlestar Galactica or Star Trek The Next Generation or Firefly. It's that good. Number 4, The Man in the High Castle. Now, if I say that this show is based off of a book written by Philip K. Dick, that should be enough because, as you know, Philip K. Dick is the same guy who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, aka Blade Runner. He's also the same guy who wrote A Scanner Darkly and so many more classic sci-fi stories and novels. For me, he's basically the best sci-fi writer of the last 100 years. So the premise of the show is, we lost World War II. The Japanese and the Nazis have divided America by the West Coast and the Midwest and East Coast. So the Japanese took everything west of the Rockies, and the Nazis took everything east of the Rockies. Now the Rockies themselves are neutral territory because they're too hard to get into and to defend. So that's kind of a free zone where people choose to live. You've got all of this intrigue and resistance, and because it's the 60s, you also have all of these issues that we were dealing with in America at the time, like racism, equal rights, xenophobia, and so much more. Now, there is a whole nother element to the show that is pretty crazy, and I won't say what it is because you definitely have to see it to believe it. There's 4 seasons, I think, of the show, and it wraps up very nicely by the 4th season. I highly recommend that you watch it. After all, like I said, it's Philip K. Dick, and Philip K. Dick was a genius.
Number 5, Undone.
Undone is definitely the weirdest show on this list. It's also one of the most brilliant shows on the list. It is animated, but it was also filmed and then they rotoscoped over it, kind of like they did for A Scanner Darkly. It deals with a lot of complicated issues like sibling rivalry, the death of parents, mental instability, relationships, and a whole lot more. You know, it's very confusing at times, but it's supposed to be. And as it goes on, it gets more cohesive. Even as things spiral further out of control, you start to understand the story more. They start to explain things. So it doesn't leave you hanging. It doesn't give you a bunch of unanswered questions. It's definitely going to keep you on the edge of your seat. You're not going to be sure what's going on, what's real, what isn't. I don't really want to give too much away about the plot because like those first few that I mentioned, there are a lot of twists and turns, and it'd be really hard to describe them in the first place. On top of all this amazing animation and groundbreaking effects, you have fantastic performances by the whole cast. But if you're a fan of drama, of stuff about mental issues, or you really love good groundbreaking animation that's trying to do something different, not something like Toy Story or whatever, then this is for you.
So those are the 5 shows that I think you should check out on Amazon Prime. There's definitely more out there, but your selection will be limited depending on where you are. Either way, these 5 are great and you should check them out. I also highly recommend Patriot. I think that's one of the coolest shows to happen in the last few years, but I've already talked about that in another video, so go check out that video. That video was called 5 Things You Should Be Streaming Right Now. So that's it for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.